It is nearly a year now since the lives of people across the globe have changed drastically because of the pandemic. Everything that we are used to also encountered a huge shift. However, we shouldn't let any change dampen our spirits, and most importantly, we shouldn't let any challenge affect our resilience. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 14th Arts Congress of the De La Salle University, Manila, with the theme Pandemic, Resilience, and the Arts. My name is Jeng Butid, the Graduate Student Council President of the College of Liberal Arts, and I will be your host for this event. This year's DLSU Arts Congress is brought to you by the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, the Office of the Assistant Dean for Research and Advanced Studies of the College of Liberal Arts, De La Salle University's The Museum, and Culture and Arts Office in cooperation with the CLA Graduate Student Council. To enjoy the virtual event, here are some of the reminders for all of our Zoom participants. Kindly put on your headset or earphones and turn your cameras and microphones off. For your questions, kindly use our Slido link, which you can access by scanning the QR code or entering the pin you are seeing on your screens. Participants watching us on Facebook may also participate in our Q&A through the Slido or the comment section of our live stream on the DLSU Arts Congress Facebook page. To begin the program, let us remember that we are always in the presence of the Lord. May I call on Dr. Fides del Castillo, Chair of Theology and Religious Education Department, to lead us into prayer.
Thank you, Jen. May I invite everybody to dispose ourselves and remember that we are in the most holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Lord, thank you for every person that is present today, for each mind and heart that fills this DLSU Arts Congress. We thank you. With your amazing power, you are able to bring hope and resilience by gracing us with your blessings. Our prayer today is that your grace will be done through this event. Take what we have prepared and multiply our efforts as only you can. Clear our intentions to align with your righteous will. Remind us of your faithful provision when our efforts fail or fall short. Blanket us with your peace, dear Lord. We also pray that you keep us and our loved ones physically safe and emotionally strong during this pandemic. Keep love and understanding at the forefront of our minds today, and the guiding light for all we set out to accomplish and celebrate in this Arts Congress. Amen. All together, let us pray our Lasallian prayer. I will continue, O my God, to do all my actions for the love of you. Saint John Baptist de La Salle, pray for us. Leave Jesus in our hearts forever. In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Fides. To formally welcome us into this event, may I now call on Dr. Raymond Tan, our Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, to give the opening remarks.
National Artist Kidlat Tahimik, Professor Emeritus Doy Del Mundo, Dean Rod Nuncio of the College of Liberal Arts, Assistant Dean for Research and Advanced Studies, Dr. Dennis Trinidad. My dear colleagues and friends, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 2021 Arts Congress. The Arts Congress was conceived originally and launched in the first decade of the century as a celebration of human creativity through talks, exhibits, performances, and scholarly paper presentations. Now in its third decade, it is firmly entrenched as one of DLSU's annual flagship events, a tradition which we are committed to uphold as part of the university's mission. We, the faculty members of DLSU, are, of course, proud of our role in advancing the state of human knowledge across a wide range of disciplines. However, in previous years, the Arts Congress was timed to coincide with the National Arts Month. And of course, we held it live so that we could enjoy each other's company face to face. This year, we find ourselves in unusual circumstances. We're holding it in March this time, but more importantly, we are holding the event in cyberspace, using the best of what technology has to offer us. And thus, it is a testament to the creativity, the persistence, and the resilience of the Lasallian community, and in particular, the faculty, staff, and students of the College of Liberal Arts under the leadership of Dean Nuncio and Assistant Dean Trinidad, that we are once again able to celebrate this tradition, even though it is under highly unusual circumstances. Today, we are honored by the presence of no less than national artist Kidlat Tahimik, who will give us a talk to launch the Arts Congress on an auspicious note. I would like to give special thanks to all the people, faculty, staff, and student volunteers who worked behind the scenes to get this 2021 Arts Congress off the ground. Because of course, there is so much more to these events than meets the eye. And for every hour of the event, you probably have several hours of preparation that goes into the works. And thus we have the Arts Congress this week. And finally, despite all of the obstacles that we face, I wish all the delegates and participants an intellectually engaging Arts Congress this coming week. Thank you and good morning to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Tan. I'm sure our participants are all very excited to get to know what's in store for them at this Arts Congress. To give us the overview of this year's Arts Congress, may I call on the chair of the Arts Congress Organizing Committee and our Assistant Dean for Research and Advanced Studies in the College of Liberal Arts, Dr. Dennis Trinidad.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Jeng. To our guest of honor, the National Artist for Film, Mr. Kidlat Tahimik, Dr. Raymond Tan, Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, fellow administrators, faculty, staff, students, and guests, a pleasant morning. Now on its 14th year, the De La Salle University Arts Congress continues to provide researchers, artists, creative writers, students, and art enthusiasts a venue to present and celebrate their creativity and research. It is composed of three major events, namely art exhibition, conference, and creative performance. The Arts Congress is usually held in the month of February in celebration of the National Arts Month, but due to the ongoing pandemic and adjustment in the academic calendar, we are compelled to move it temporarily in March. The theme of this year's Arts Congress is Pandemic, Resilience, and the Arts, to reflect the realities that we are all facing. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, our day-to-day lives are disrupted and we are forced to stay at home. For many of us, the arts have been a constant companion during our COVID-19 confinement, whether it is music, dance, theater, visual art. Art heals our floundered spirit and calms our restless minds in these trying times. It helps us endure the confinement and makes the gloomy pandemic situation bearable. The 14th Arts Congress celebrates the role of art in navigating through the pandemic and in our resilience as a nation. We are very honored to have with us the great filmmaker, Mr. Kidlat Tahimik, as our keynote speaker and featured national artist. In the afternoon today, we will launch our first ever virtual art exhibition. 6 contributing artists were chosen to talk about their submitted artworks at 11 a.m. event today. We have organized 2 special webinars, one on curation and the other on shadow play tomorrow morning. In the afternoon, we will be live streaming Translation, a performance by LaSalle Dance Company Street, which depicts our struggles during the lockdown, and a special live streaming of pre-recorded performances of students and faculty dubbed as Hiyas ng Sining on the official DLSU Arts Congress Facebook page. On Thursday and Friday is the Arts Congress Conference. The conference will open with a keynote from Congressman Christopher De Venecia on the status of the creative industry in the time of the pandemic. Unlike last year, all paper presentations in parallel sessions are pre-recorded and uploaded on YouTube. Finally, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the members of the organizing committee, to Dr. Raymond Tan, the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, the Culture and Arts Office, headed by Ms. Jill Samudio, the Curator of the Museum at De La Salle University, Ms. Lalin Buncab, and the College of Liberal Arts Graduate Student Council under the leadership of Ms. Jeng Buted. In addition, I would like to acknowledge our very efficient PhD apprentice and our graduate student assistant at the Office of Assistant Dean for Research and Advanced Studies, namely Mr. Joseph Martin Jose and Ms. Joanna Felicilda. Thanks also to Ms. Gina Espinilla, our address office assistant, all our graduate student volunteers, and the ABSU team for their invaluable assistance. I would like to extend my gratitude to our colleagues in the CLA and research centers who are participating as plenary speakers and those who are involved in the program. It is indeed going to be a week-long celebration of artistic creativity, performance, and research. Thank you, and again, a pleasant morning to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis, for giving us what this year's Arts Congress will offer our participants. To get a copy of the calendar of events, you may visit DLSU Arts Congress on Facebook or events official page. Truly, arts played a very vital role in the lives of many people during the pandemic. It has made quarantine life a little bearable for each of us as we adapt to the new normal. To introduce our keynote speaker for this morning, may I call on our own gem in the College of Liberal Arts from the Department of Communication, Professor Emeritus Dr. Clodoaldo Doy del Mundo Jr.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker. In 1974, while we were filming Maynila sa mga kuko ng liwanag with Lino Broca as a director, Eric De Guia was shooting his own thing somewhere in Laguna with a 16mm camera. We would learn that he's from Baguio City, that he gave up his MBA diploma from Wharton School of Finance to pursue his passion, filmmaking. Encyclopedia of Philippine Art describes it more dramatically. After a stint as an economist in Paris, he, quote, tore up his MBA diploma in 1972 to become an artist, unquote. A crazy character, one would think, or a real artist, or both. We finished Maynila in 1975, and it was shown commercially. Eric finished his film Mababangong Bangungot, or Perfume Nightmare, in 1977, and showed it in the Berlin Film Festival, where it was awarded the International Critics Prize. We would continue our different paths in filmmaking. While we tried to survive in the industry, Eric pursued his independent filmmaking. He became known as Kidlat Tahimik, the name of the character he plays in Mababangong Bangungot, which he had adopted officially. Kidlat Tahimik captures the essence of the filmmaker that Eric De Guia had become. He once described his brand of filmmaking as cups of gasoline technique. He gets his cup of gasoline, read funds from wherever. When he runs out of gasoline, he stops filming, and the next cup to appear from somewhere. That brand of filmmaking has allowed him to be free from the demands of a commercial industry and the conventions of cinema. He would depend on what he referred to as his duende to guide him in his pursuit of film. It would not be unusual for his films to take years to finish, or even a lifetime. For example, the film that he started in 1970 Memories of Overdevelopment, Ang Balikbayan, about Enrique, the slave of Magellan, who arguably would have been the first person to circumnavigate the globe, was just finished, at least a version of it, in 2015 as Ang Balikbayan number 1, Memories of Overdevelopment, Redux 3. Since he started filmmaking in the early 70s, Kidlat Tahimik has continued creating his personal films like a true auteur, as conceived by the French critics in the late 50s. Kidlat Tahimik has his own unique style. Some may describe it as naive, but that does not get beneath the surface image of his films. He has consistently in his films the underlying theme of cultural imperialism and exploitation to the detriment of the genius of the indigenous. True to his name, his films have created some flashes of light, big and little sparks in the dark firmament of Philippine cinema. They have attracted audiences here and abroad, but after the flashes of lightning, there is no roar of thunder. There is no fanfare. Nonetheless, his quiet career of a lifetime has been recognized with well-deserved awards. The Fukuoka Prize in Japan in 2012, the Prince Claus Award in the Netherlands in 2017, and quite belatedly, the National Artist Award in his own country in 2018. The Arts Congress at De La Salle University is indeed fortunate to have Kidlat Tahimik, artist, for the keynote performance. Thank you.
Fourteenth De La Salle University Arts Congress, which they are conducting online. Okay, pandemic, resilience, and the arts. This theme of the 14th Arts Congress, malaking challenge po sa amin yan, lalo pa kami mga senior citizen artists, mga matatanda. No? Because the whole pandemic puts us also in a kind of a box. No? Yung we are put in a box, nakakahon kami na yung nakamarka sa box V. Kami ang pinaka-vulnerable V. Maybe we can even use that MVP in the box, no? Hindi ho most valuable player yan. It's more really most vulnerable sa pandemic. Now, as a senior artist, how does that affect how I express myself in my art form, no? Does this mean that natitigil lang ang paggawa ko ng trabaho ko or nag-i-slow down, nag-i-slow motion lahat ang ginagawa ko? Does this mean may straight jacket na ako? Because maraming restrictions ang pandemic and we understand that. And right now, eto, nagpa-fog ang glasses ko kasi maybe, okay. Let me take off my mask. I'm sure na hindi naman magtra-transmit online itong pandemic. I will not be violating any protocols. But just for the record, maybe alam nyo, last December 4, my wife and I were both septuagenarians. I'm 78, my wife Katrine is 70. We were both diagnosed positive sa swab test namin. Well, nag 15 days voluntary quarantine kami. You know, every day binibisita kami ng mga astronauts. Isang army ng mga naka-PPE gear who faithfully monitored us for the next 15 days. And after that, yeah, on December 4th noon, and on Christmas, I was declared negative. My wife still had some signs of low viral count, pero by New Year, she was also declared negative. Kaya, ang New Year's resolution namin, we will be negative in 2021. We have to be negative. Let me try to reverse a little bit something. No? Ang tema of this conference is pandemic, resilience, and the arts. Let me play as a little bit with this title. And can I reverse the title? Can we make it the arts, pandemic, and resilience? Kasi it's an ordered, itong following this kind of order is a little bit more comfortable for me to talk about it. No? Kasi ang arts, ang sining has been nasa gitna ng buhay ko mula pa nung before the pandemic. And maybe it's good to start kung paano yung daloy ng aking panlilikha, the way I create, whether it's my films or whether it's my performances or installations, and see how this is restricted by the protocols of pandemic. And maybe, and this is, we're automatically yung resilience, lalabas yan, no? Resilience, I was inaanap ko yung Tagalog word, sabi nila matatag, sabi nila matibay, pero I think may kasama pang ibang dimension yung resilience. It's yung adaptability natin, yung pakikipag-ugnay natin sa sitwasyon. Kasi sa pinakakaloob-looban ng artist, may malakas na gustong makipagkwento. The expression of, and what I call my duende, my inner duende has a story to tell. And if suddenly I have restrictions na hindi ako pwedeng lumabas, lalo pa kaming senior citizens, no? Wow, bawal lumabas ang mga senior citizens. Bawal mag-mall ang mga over 60. Well, let you into the secret anyway. I've been boycotting malls, these mga temples of consumerism. But that's another story. Bawal si lolo at lolo bumisita sa mga apo. And maybe, as a senior citizen filmmaker, bawal makipag-shooting sa labas, or hindi ako makakuha ng permit kasi ang unang hahanapin sa akin yung age card ko. But, you know, I just remembered last year at the 13th De La Salle Congress, I was already invited to keynote your last Congress. Pero I had some previous engagements, and if I remember right, yung tema nila, okay, pamana at sining, valuing the arts, rediscovering heritage, and reaffirming identities. Ang maganda dito, ang pinag-usapan nila yung resilience. It was the 13th Congress last year, but they were asking me to talk on the resilience in the era of global of cultural globalization. Well, the pandemic is part of our globalized circumstance ngayon, and in a way, I think this relates to last year's theme, and let me see how I can share with you yung daloy ng aking working as an artist given the circumstances. No? Okay, 2020 was the marked changes due to the pandemic. 2021 tuloy-tuloy pa rin. Malaking pag-asa ko sana na by this 2021 magre-relax ng konti. Everything remains to be seen. Anyway, 2021. Is there any significance to any of you, that date? Okay. It's a quincentennial. 500 years ago, para sa akin, ang pinakamalaking event noon was yung Battle ng Mactan, where Magellan was repulsed. Tinepok siya ni Lapu-Lapu, and it was a initial encounter that showed our pagkadakila ng ating mga bayani laban sa kolonyalismo. No? It's significant for me, and even more significant is that first circumnavigation, which they're going to celebrate in 2022 sa Spain. No? Nung nabuo yung circumnavigation at dumating yung mga vapor that had left Sevilla in 1519. Tapos pagdating dito, nagkaroon ng change of command, nagkaroon ng change ng Captain Ball kasi tinepok si Magellan ni Lapu-Lapu dito. Elcano took over and completed the voyage. So 2022 is their big celebration. But 2021, when they arrived here, let me introduce you to the first circumnavigator who might have been from our islands. Enrique de Malacca. Those of you who have read Pigafetta have come across his name. Enrique de Malacca was the slave of Magellan. Now, in those days, when you buy a slave, you Christianize him, give him a Christian name, and he was given the name of Enrique after Henry the Navigator. And kasi binili sa Malacca ni Magellan, because Magellan would go to Malacca to load his ship with spices, he was called Enrique de Malacca. Now, this lowly slave is mentioned several times in the official journal of that voyage written by Antonio Pigafetta. This has given me a reason to celebrate 2021, because in my book, the first circumnavigator of this planet was not Magellan, not Elcano, but our very own Enrique de Malacca, or let's call him Iking, para mas familiar. By a twist of fate, Enrique, who was taken by Magellan and bought in Malacca, brought to Europe, where Magellan negotiated with the King of Spain to have a new route, to find a new route to the Philippines. Well, hindi pa Pilipinas tayo nun. Enrique was with him, and when they started the historical voyage, which is now known as the first circumnavigation, ayan, tumawid sila sa Atlantic Ocean. Tapos pagdating nila sa Brazil, kinapaka-paka pa nila yung coast until they found the Strait of Magellan, a passage to the Pacific Ocean. And the rest is history. For 99 days, tumawid sila ng Pacific Ocean, and they got to this archipelago, which they call the archipelago ni San Lazaro, because it was the day they arrived here. March 16, 1521, they arrived in Limasawa. Now, what's significant here, bakit ko pinagtiyagaan itong film? I've been working on this film for 35 years, and I'm hoping this year, 2021, pwede ko nang bitawan. It's called Balikbayan #1, about Enrique de Malacca. Nakabalik siya to his home island here in the Philippines. Anyway, we'll go into more on that. Let me just give you an example of how I was shooting this film. And let me note to you that because of the way I create the storytelling, so that as an indie filmmaker, hindi ako gumagamit ng isang army of specialists, army of professionals, army of alalays, and therefore maybe I'm less affected by the rules of a pandemic protocol. By multitasking a lot of things to myself as an artist, ayan, kaya kong tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang trabaho ko maski na walang protocols ng social distancing and travel restrictions. Let's go and look at the first scene of the film, the beginning of this film. And please note that bukod ako yung director ng film, and sometimes I'm also the cameraman, ako rin ang main actor, ako rin ang bida. This is my way of telling stories na without hiring very expensive superstars. Kasi ako ang cheapest actor available. I'm always on call. So I can tell my story no matter how long it takes. So let's take a first look at who is this Enrique de Malacca and how he is a central figure in 2021, our 500th year. Okay, roll it, maestro.
Our film begins after the circumnavigation of the globe. Enrique, the slave of Magellan, now a free man, has returned home to his native village. On the soundtrack, we should hear sounds of a wild boar. The yo-yo is not a toy for Enrique. The yo-yo is recorded in a 17th century French document as an original Philippine jungle weapon. Enrique comes from Ifugao, a province where woodcarvers are abundant today. Throughout the film, we will see Pigafetta writing entries of the voyage into his journal, but Enrique, being illiterate, carves his memories of the voyage on wood. We find Enrique's memories of overdevelopment carved in pieces of wood scattered all over his yard. Okay, we have a flash forward a couple of years. Magellan has quit Portugal because the king of Portugal refuses to finance the big voyage that Magellan now plans to find a western route. He is now in Spain, in Sevilla, and after 2 years he finally gets an appointment with King Carlos I. The king at this point offers his gold and silver chess sets in exchange for borrowing the slave in hopes that it might keep the princess out of her autistic, depressive state. So Enrique has become some kind of a household pet. The princess is in high spirits. The playful duo sometimes creates shockwaves in the castle. A royal scandal. The king upset, and in order to send the young man as far west as possible, the king approves Magellan's project.
Ayan, it's a sample ng style of working that I have and the style of films. I don't think you can call it a Hollywood, sobrang over budgeted. It's all done on a small budget. Pero look, napansin nyo, I was 33 years old then. I'm 78 now, okay? That's almost 4 to go. Pero why did I stick on in spite of lack of funding, in spite of lack of logistics to make a big film? Bakit tumuloy-tuloy pa rin ako to do this project? I attribute that, I mentioned earlier, yung duende, yung creative force within every artist, yung duende ko, no? Kayong lahat ng mga artists may sariling duende who frames the world, no? Ang duende mo has a different frame of the world than my frame. We can watch the same event, we can tell the same story, pero yung duende mo will include it this way, or siguro ganon yung framing niya. And that is what the unique storytelling is, no? The world is waiting for these stories. So I had to trust my duende's need to tell the story. Kaya hindi ako nag-give up 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Basta't alam ko lang na the world must know the story of Enrique de Malacca, the first person to go around the world who was from our country. Especially ngayon, di ba? Usong-uso yung Pinoy bashing. Palibasa, ganyan ang Pinoy. But we have done a lot of achievements in this world. I think in the long run, they will realize that although we have many colonized habits that sometimes allow other countries to look down on us, but if we combine our duende storytelling, okay, yung nanggaling sa sariling kultura natin, and combine that with yung galing sa kultura ng dayuhan, yeah, as Chitang Nakpil, Carmen Guerrero Nakpil said, we Filipinos have lived 350 years in a Spanish convent and 50 years in America's Hollywood. Wow, siguro ang gulo ng utak natin because of that. But it can be an advantage if we combine that sa kultura natin, sa pinanggalingan natin. And maybe that's the problem with artists today, is that unknowingly we have become a copycat culture. Gusto nating kopya ng style ng Hollywood, gusto nating gumawa ng mga likhang artistic na projects that will be like they do it in New York or in Paris. But ang napakalakas ng ating storytelling capacity if naka-anchor with our local storytelling. And that's where our duende comes in, kasi our duende has that frame. And if you're not copying the formula na talagang yung formula na patok sa takilya, okay? That's what I call psst films, mga psst films, PST, patok sa takilya, which we have inherited from Hollywood. And therefore, all our storytelling has to be in that certain frame, which is PST. This is where our challenge as Filipino artists comes in. Okay, if you want to make a killing at the box office and you want to buy your first Mercedes-Benz after your first film, wala tayong, di tayo katalo dyan. But if you want to tell us yung kwento na talagang nakabatay sa ating pinanggalingan at sa ating paparunan, yung nakabatay sa ating kultura, sa ating kasaysayan, you don't have to be a copycat and follow those ways of storytelling, yung psst storytelling. And I think from the footages that I just showed you, we can in simpler ways, in less bombastic ways, in less sensational ways, still tell stories because we have a confidence sa kultura natin. And this is where, if hindi natin kinahihiya ang ating kultura, alam natin na kaya nating harapin ang ibang kultura eye to eye, mano-mano. We can, kasing galing ng kultura natin ang kultura nila. Then, the world will respect us. They will look at our stories and say, wow, saan galing yan? Wow, ang laki palang binubuga ng mga Pinoy storytellers.
Okay, we are now on the big voyage. Somewhere in the Pacific, Enrique has just carved a chess set out of wood. And he says to his master, Master, I think with my new set, I will now be able to defeat you. It has become a regular Saturday night tournament.
Double check.
At this time, this is the first time the master realizes that Enrique is a thinking animal. Enrique, I think you will not be a slave forever.
Check. Checkmate. Pero teka muna, what really took place nung last day ni Magellan? Just before si Enrique tumawid sa kanyang kalayaan?
In the last will and testament of Magellan, which still exists today, at the moment of his death, Enrique shall be a free man. So we are now approaching the Philippines, where one of the chieftains, Lapu-Lapu, has refused to bow to the Spanish conquerors, unlike other chieftains on neighboring islands. The chieftain, Lapu-Lapu, has decided he wants to avoid a physical war and would first try to repel the invaders with the sound of bamboo instruments. We shall have 1,000 warriors with their bamboo angklong or rattles trying to ward off the invaders. But after 24 hours of such noise barrage, it becomes evident that they may have to fight a physical war. On board the ship, one of the sailors panics and fires a cannon, and Lapu-Lapu has no choice, and we see a lot of blood. The village welcomes back Enrique and rejoices, not necessarily at the first circumnavigation of the globe, but just at the return of a lost son. And so Enrique returned to be able to tell future generations about the first circumnavigation of the globe.
Ayan. The ending of the film is a big kanyaw with a lot of gongs, ting it, ting it, ting it, ting, celebrating yung pagbabalik ng isang balikbayan sa kanyang village, no? Maybe the villagers don't even know na nakaikot na ng mundo, first circumnavigation. Basta, ay, welcome home. Ayan, is that stretching it? Kung ginawa kong ifugaw itong si Enrique. Palibhasa, yeah, I'm familiar with this culture. Kung magre-research pa ako, ano yung costume ng Lapu-Lapu no, nasa Cebu, ganon. Maybe it would have been a production design na mas talagang bagay kung talagang gumagawa ka ng Hollywood film. Pero itong storytelling ko, basta makuha mo yung snatches na, oops, taga rito, taga isla, from a primitive culture, maybe that is enough to create this feeling na somebody of a, not from the technological world, not from the Renaissance world of Magellan, was able to come back to his culture and still accomplish. Ito yung tinatawag ko rin, well, let's go to that one of the, sa tema natin, pandemic, and then the pandemic has led to resiliency, di ba? And the usual resiliency we talk about now is like, mga film festival ngayon, nag-online, everything is, wala na yung usual pagpunta lahat ng mga filmmakers sa isang film festival, basta they can watch films online. Or you probably heard yung New York Symphony Orchestra. Lahat sila nakakalat, 77 members in different apartments, pero naka-zoom in sila sa baton ng conductor, kaya nakapag-ugnay lahat sila and they were able to get together. Okay, the artists have that resiliency, and maybe because of this pandemic challenge to do new ways. Ang naisip ko rin, there was a certain resiliency required of me, partly because kulang sa budget, kulang sa logistics. But itong to last 40 years, almost 40 years to finish the film. Unang-una, wala akong script. So, meron akong broad story, pero I would let the storytelling sequences mangyayari as they would come to me, no? Parang sinasuggest ng kataas-taasan ng cosmos anong next na gagawin ko. And in a way that nagsunod-sunod yun over almost 40 years hanggang, would you believe, it's 2021 and I'm still tweaking the film. Baka magdagdag pa ako ng 1 or 2 sequences o magbawas ako ng ilan. Pero more or less, nagtatighten na yung story after 40 years. If I have lasted 40 years, maybe it was also, actually, yung anak ko, si Kawayan, who was about 2 years old nung inumpisan ko itong film in 79, no? Then meron akong Magellan, who was my main actor as Magellan until 1993 or 94. Tapos namatay na siya out of old age. And I didn't know how I was going to continue, pero somehow I waited. And then one day, my son Kawayan had such a beautiful beard na kamukha nung beard nung si Magellan. And by waiting 40 years, suddenly siya yung gumanap ng role, and it helped me finish the film, no? Now, I'm not suggesting everybody waits for somebody to walk out of the blue to finish your film, but I'm saying that sometimes yung resilience that is trusting that the cosmos will provide, no? Na merong basta't bathala na ang philosophy ko when the film will be finished. Ayun, si Kawayan became Magellan and that allowed me to finish the film. Now, another form of resiliency siguro is the I am also free of the constraints of yung monopoly ng cineplexes to show the films. If I was totally dependent na kailangan kong mapakita yung pelikula ko sa Cineplex or in the big mall venues, that would put me in a different ball game. But I stayed, by keeping my budget small, yung talagang, being my own actor, using the small sets, a small crew. I don't have to fall into that commercial rule, no? Or yung MBA rule that you have to get back your money times 5. 500% rate of return. Sa akin, basta nakompleto ko lang yung kwento ko, is enough satisfaction. And so this is a kind of, I think it's a resiliency that's based on not being tied to the rules of films or Hollywood box office formulas. A last example siguro of resiliency that I can think of, no, yung siguro yung need ko to tell this story, no? Bakit napaka-obsessed na rin ako in the end after 30 years, 20, 25, 30, 35 years para tapusin film. And sometimes I ask myself, siguro, baka naman I was Enrique de Malaca in my past life. Baka I'm reincarnated now to retell the story, something na naranasan ko 500 years ago. Well, that's a kind of wild story, but it could be. And I ask myself ngayon, bakit ako takot na takot sa dagat? I have a big fear sometimes when I'm just by the beach, no? And siguro maybe because in my past lifetime, I was so at home with the sea. I was a seafarer, an Austronesian boat rider who could ride the balanghay and go long stretches without land kasi I was at home in the sea. Anyway, these are factors that maybe let me endure to finish the film this year after I started it in 1979. So let's take a look at this clip.
Mga hakbang malalaki sa pilapil na walang hanggang. Mag-ingat. Naninibago ka sa bagong daan. Malayo ang iyong paparunan.
Tugok mo. Tulun na kan apom. Panhine kayo.
Mga hakbang matatag. Akyat ang lakaran. Bawat hakbang palapit sa kasagutan na naghihintay sa dulo ng hagdanan. Mga hakbang malalaki, katapusan ng lakbay. Ayan na.
Mamata ko. Po. Sige.
Ako si Ferdinando. So ngayong 2021, anong parang challenge para kay Kinlad Tahimik? Okay, napansin ko over the last 2 decades na ang mga kabataan ngayon, they're all overdosed with images of Spider-Man. Alam nila yung talambuhay ni Wonder Woman at ni Captain America. Pero somehow, wala talaga silang alam tungkol sa mga bayani, sa mga sariling bayani natin. Well, siguro si Rizal because he's been overexposed, maybe he has a lot more. Pero mga people like even Bonifacio or si Emilio Jacinto, or more like the local heroes like dito si Macling Dulag sa Cordilleras, si Papa Issue sa Iloilo, si Sultan Kudarat sa Mindanao. Well, producers are usually lazy to show period films. And this void, siguro 2021 is a good year to start it. Besides ako, matatapos ko. I'm really completing the film this year. I hope to say goodbye to Balikbayan #1. Siguro this year, I want to spread some seeds. I'm sponsoring a contest at the senior high school level. No? I'm still getting cooperation of DepEd. FDCP is going to support this. It's to encourage young high school students to do a 5-minute lang, 5 to 10 minutes, isang talambuhay ng isang local hero. Magre-research ang mga kabataan, and then, because I know that a lot of high schools now, senior high schools are encouraging doing audiovisuals. Makagawa sila ng short film about a local hero. I think this will be counting neutralizer, no? Or balancer. Magbabalance lang na overdose ng... Kasi sa Cineplexes, the only films you'll see are the Marvel films. But if kids will not see it anyway there, but at least meron silang project to do it, I think this might be one way to promote an appreciation for yung mga kadakilaan ng ating mga sariling bayani. I'm calling this contest USB, our unsung sariling bayani. Sana pumasok sa radar ng ating mga kabataan. So what does this leave us now? A challenge, a final challenge kayo mga students who are considering telling stories in film or video, or telling your stories on canvas, or short story writers. For this Arts Month, well, lumipas ng Arts Month, but for Arts Congress is part of that. Let's think about just telling your story, letting your sariling duende find the energy, get obsessed with that story. And no matter what lack of resources, no matter what lack of budgetary support or logistic support, kasi napakalakas ng pagkakailangan ng duwende mo to tell the story. Yan ang susundan mo. And in this way, at least, siguro, for me anyway, nakikita ko that yung copycat culture natin will slowly fade away kung everybody looks for that original local story about our local hero. So that's what I did for 40 years. You don't have to last 40 years for that. You can do that in one semester. Look for that local story that your local duende, your sariling duende will tell. And let me end with a little anecdote. My best friend, my Ifugao mentor, always mispronounced the word indigenous when he would talk about letting the indigenous influence affect our storytelling. He would mispronounce the word and say, our indigenous stories have to be heard. We must hear about our indigenous heroes. Napakaganda. Mispronunciation siya kasi Ifugao siya. Wala siyang education in our modern education. Pero he combined the word genius and indigenous into one word. And I think this is what we're looking for. Instead of being copycats, let's have confidence in our indigenous storytelling, of which our sariling duende framing will be a key. No? And let me end with a visual to tell the local story, to tell about mga indigenous bayani natin. I have a metaphor here. Ito yung bamboo camera ko. I give bamboo camera awards every 2 years, 3 years to local filmmakers who have told the local story. Hindi sila copycat sa mga kwento nila, yung mga script nila, walang formula ng Hollywood, hindi overdose ng sex and violence. Telling the local story, galing sa kultura nila, sa katutubong kaalaman nila. We need these stories. So the bamboo camera will be our weapon. Ito ang ating panghanap sa mga indigenous stories natin. Sugod mga kapatid, shoot the local story. Yan na. Cut.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kidlat Tahimik. We are so honored to be graced with the presence of our national artist for film, and he is with us in the Zoom call today. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Please don't call me sir. Sir is a colonial word. Call me kuya or manong or tatay, okay? Yan ang first rule lang. Okay, let's open the floor
Yes.
for any comments, questions, tomatoes. You can't throw tomato over Zoom, but anyway, if my acting did not meet the Oscar standards, pasensya na lang. But I think in my own playful way, my duende way, I tried to embody Enrique as our unsung, our USB, our unsung sariling bayani. And I hope just with this online conference, at least ilan ang participants, 53,
We have
more people know
yes,
about
sir. Yes,
Enrique de
Manong.
Malacca.
And also, we have people who are watching our live stream on Facebook. So for our participants, you may now submit your questions for our keynote speaker through our Slido link. Can we flash the Slido code? It's 54228. That's the Slido code. Or you can easily scan the QR code so that you could be redirected to the Slido page. And those who are watching us on Facebook, you could put your questions in the comment section.
While we're waiting for a few questions, let me just state that, okay, 1521, and now 2021, in spite of my rusty and creaky bones, in spite of having survived COVID, parang tuloy-tuloy pa rin itong kwento ni Enrique de Malaca. So I've been invited to Spain in October to show a big installation, and it will be sponsored by the Reina Sofia Museum. I think you've heard about it. It's probably the second largest or most important museum in Europe after the Louvre. But I said, wow, it's a good chance for me to tell them, hoy, mga compañeros, your history of what happened 500 years ago, maybe we have our own version. Your villain is our hero, Lapu-Lapu. And your hero, Magellan, is our villain. So from a point of view of a storyteller, I'm going to share that story in the land of the colonialists so that they're at least aware, hoy, may ibang version ng history. And maybe
Yeah,
that's what we can do as storytellers. Okay, shoot the questions.
The questions that we have here, I have two related questions. What do you think is the unique identity of Filipino cinema and what makes it unique from others? And related to that, Manong, how do you describe or characterize distinctively Filipino storytelling?
Okay, let's get it straight. I have a very strong penchant for indigenous stories and indigenous way of thinking. But I'm not saying that you have to have a hero na may bahag to have a Filipino film, okay? Like it or not, we have been colonized. As I said, as Chitang Nakpil had written, we've had 3 centuries of Spanish rule plus 50 years of Hollywood under the Americans, and of course, continuing now into this day of media and cyberspace. It can continue to be a colonial tool which will minimize our sharing what is truly Filipino. But given the fact that we have been colonized for 4 centuries, it's a circumstance. We don't have to hate our colonizers. We have to say, oh, narito na, pero bakit natin kahihiya yung pre-colonial kultura natin? So if we assert that pre-Hispanic culture and blend it with all these Americanizations and yeah, man, from Boston and everything like that, kung ano kultura natin, we can always come up, I think, with a very unique Filipino culture. It's a hybrid culture. Talagang medyo, it's truly Filipino. And I think in this sense, maybe I am bending over backwards to tell stories that are probably hardly told or will hardly be produced by Mother Lily or by ABS-CBN. But if at least our young crop will say, oh, wow, there are other stories to tell. It doesn't have to be this bang, 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 pok, 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 that is coming from the formulas of the West. At least I think magbubukas ng panibagong storytelling. And a lot has happened in the last 10 years, no, or more than, with Cinemalaya and a lot of our other platforms, indie filmmaking has become a way of avoiding the copycat culture. Kaya yung unique identity natin is that mixture. Yeah, if we have to, like in my film, I wear my bag with pride, it's okay. It's a way to tell other young filmmakers that, hey, there are stories from our past. Let's dig into them. Let's look for them sa mga kasulok-sulukan natin ng baryo ko, barangay ko, and we will enrich global culture by doing that. That is a Filipino mark that we can add to global film culture.
It's very beautiful, Manong. I have here another question. Do you ever experience artist blocks? And if ever, how do you deal with them?
Artist what?
Block. Yes.
A block. I think artist block, like any situation sometimes na medyo challenge ka by the situation kung minsan pressure ka, nagkakaroon ng block. Yeah, I think I do that, but I think the reason, one of the sources of artist block is parang nagtatrying hard tayo para maging gagaya nila. We want to make that blockbuster that will outdo Star Wars 24 or Men in Black 58 or Indiana Jones 2048. Yung mga repeating formulas. And if we get into that trap, we can only become magiging second-class creators lang tayo. So, kung binalikan natin yung kaalaman ng sariling kultura, which is part of our sariling duendes look at the world, no? I think we can deal with that artist block, which is coming from the colonized mind. Yung, oy, hindi pwede yan kasi, man, you gotta do it our way. That's an artist block that we don't realize comes from our colonization. And maybe, let me add a little point here. Let's look at one aspect of our culture now. I think might be interesting. In the past 2 decades, I got involved with, it's a field called Psikolohiyang Filipino or Kapwa Psychology. I think those of the students here who have studied their first psychology course might have come across Kapwa Psychology. Now, I think about 40 years ago, a UP professor, si Dr. Virgilio Enriquez, raised the question, no? Why are we Filipinos, why are we analyzing Filipinos through Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, Skinner and his rats? Anong kaugnayan natin sa mga rats ni Skinner sa Harvard? No? Now, because he did that, he said, let us look for our own methodology to understand the Filipino based on our core values. And after some research, they found Kapwa, where we, the self, includes the other. No? That's very core to our Filipino culture. We are an including culture. Parang paradigm ito, contra or opposite to the Western paradigm of excluding. The Western thinking is, ako muna, I have to create my borders, hanggang dyan ka lang. Hoy, kahit magkaibigan tayo, pero I'm after your job, you're after my job. So hanggang dyan lang tayo. You know, this kind of defining borders is part of their culture. And that comes naturally from their industrial competitive culture. But if we use that to tell our own stories, tayo, malakas pa rin ang daloy ng kapamilya, how we treat each other, we accept strangers much more easily than others. If that becomes an ingredient in our films, no? Instead of doing serial killers, which, yeah, it happens here now, pero serial killers are probably from an industrial society where yung anonymity ng mga tao, they don't know each other and they get repressed and they get lonely and they suddenly become serial killers. But that's not the nature of our including Kapwa culture. So maybe I can also suggest to any of you who are interested, Google Kapwa Psychology or Psikolohiyang Filipino, and maybe you will get some ingredients to include into your storytelling. And I think the Kapwa ingredient is truly who we are. You can still have some blockbuster films, but letting that Kapwaness come out instead of always copying these cool, cold heroes. Yeah, like a lot of the Marvel heroes, they're cold, they have laser guns, they can zap you out without caring about, uy, kapwa ko yata yung nasaktan ko. Let's try to go back to that. And I think we can find storytelling that will be really, really, truly Filipino, even if the characters are wearing coat and tie, or the characters are flying through the sky, tan 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 tan. Pero malakas ang kapwa character nila. Well, it's just an example of how we can go back to our own storytelling.
Yeah. So
Next.
that's the reminder for all the filmmakers there, stay true to yourself
Hey,
or
sorry,
Filipino
sorry.
culture and identity. So, another question from Mr. Enzo Buenaflor. Sa inyo pong palagay, kung hindi po tayo sinakop ng mga Kastila at Amerikano, ano po kaya ang magiging topografiya ng kasulukuyang sinema ng bansa?
Okay. Again, siguro hindi ko masasagot yan kasi hindi total ang kaalaman ko about how it was before. Siguro, I had the fortune that I'm born here in Baguio, raised here. I interacted with people from the Bontoc, from Ifugao, from Kalinga. And I know that when I was a kid, there was a kind of a condescension kasi the elite here in Baguio had probably adopted some of that. Uy, kayo mga primitive, kayo mga backward, kayo mga pagans. You know, it was almost natural to say to accept those pejorative terms which came from the colonial masters. Ayun, at least to answer that question, maybe we would not have these pejorative attitudes towards the Highlanders, no? It's ironic na kayo mga lowlanders, well, not you guys in particular, but maybe a lot of lowlanders look down on the Highlanders. Di ba? That's an irony. I remember, I think about 15 years ago, on a television show, see Lucy Torres, okay? Maybe it was not her fault. The scriptwriter had just put it, but she mouthed it. There was a line there na, "Hoy, pangit-pangit mo. Siguro tatay mo, igorot." Okay, that's politically incorrect. It's culturally yucky. Pero, okay, ha 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 ha, the audience laughs. Because it was like part of the colonial pejorative attitude towards our mountain people who are actually a very sophisticated culture, who have very strong respect for nature, who know how to harmonize with nature. And if we had probably, siguro kung sinundan natin yung mga kaalaman nila, we wouldn't be having our cultural, our environmental crisis dito sa bayan natin. No? But we copied the, well, okay, let's take the Americans. They came and taught us, they came to Baguio, they said, "Uy, look at all those pine trees, man." And they put a dollar sign on every pine tree. Wow, pare, you can exploit that. And then we start cutting trees, and now maraming landslides dito. Pero kung nakinig tayo sa mga taga rito, and who said, "Hoy, kapwa kahoy, kapwa gubat, ginagalang kita. Kailangan ko ng isa o dalawa lang puno para gawin ko yung bahay ko. Please allow me to use you." Okay, this kind of galang, we would not be abusing our nature. So, will that topography, I like that word, the topography of our Filipino culture or films, no? I think we would have a much more balanced, maybe balanced by kapwa, and a kapwa attitude to our trees and to the rivers, no? That could balance our storytelling. And I think if you let stories be told with that kind of yung galang, yung harmony with, kung nasa comic books natin, sa mga short stories, sa mga curriculum natin, we would be much more useful in this climate change fight to save the planet. Kasi we would have been still in connection with the topography before the Spanish came, before the Americans came. So, balikan natin. I think there's still hope. I'm an optimist. I get worried sometimes kung alalakas na ng mga bagyo. Ang dami ng Yolanda, dami ng melting polar caps. Pero, ayan, it's, kayo mga estudyante, you can still strive for that. Yung, it's not a romantic view only of crazy artists like Kidlat Tahimik. It's the whole, I think also in this pandemic, hindi ba? Ang dami natin, nakikita natin sa mga webinars, sa mga online, there are a lot of new thinking going on. But that yung new thinking is really, binabalikan natin yung kaalaman ng mga Ifugao, yung kaalaman ng mga Bontok at Kalinga o mga American Indians who Hollywood always portrayed as mga savages, mga kalaban, mga walang hiya. Hey, our story has to be told now. And maybe, dahil doon, pwede tayo bumalik sa balanced, sustainable. That's an overused word, sustainable. Pero makabalik tayo sa kaugnayan with nature. And I think that our storytelling has to go back to that instead of just money-making, sex and violence, sensational images. Balikan natin ang nice old stories galing sa mga sulok ng ating mga barangay.
And I think, sir, with the note on political correctness, I have high hopes because now artists are really woke, as they say, and very sensitive when it comes especially to dealing with culture of the indigenous people in the country. Last question, sir, to cap the Q&A. I think everyone is interested. Where can they avail or access your films, or are there any upcoming festivals where they can join and see your works?
Mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. I realized recently na there was a yung journal of pelikula. There was an article there, and there was a German film buff who conducted a survey among young filmmakers dito sa Baguio, sa Pilipinas, and asked the relevance of Kidlat Tahimik as an influence on filmmaking. Pero sa mga sagot lahat, there was this consistent thing na, how do we access Kidlat Tahimik's films, no? I mean, sobrang tahimik, hindi namin marinig, hindi namin makita. Okay, I was never, in spite of the fact that I had an MBA, and I think Doy mentioned it, that I tore up my Wharton MBA diploma. In spite of that, I have not really been good, or maybe I've never focused on marketing. I always felt that siguro somehow my eccentric films, if they might call it that, or my obscure films might reach those, that tiny audience that is looking for that. But I think, yeah, if this year I know that Perfume Nightmare and Turumba, my first two films, were available on YouTube. Somebody loaded it, pero it was always in 10-minute segments, so it's not really doing justice to see that. Let me start by, I will provide at least your university library with all my films, or your mass communication department, so that no matter how sometimes difficult or sometimes how rough or untechnically polished my films are, it will be a story parang pwedeng gamitin para pag-aralan ng storytelling. It will show you both how to make a film and both how not to make a film. Like Perfume Nightmare, which I did, well, almost 45 years ago. It's so crude. It has so many glitches which Hollywood or even a non-Hollywood spectator might maiiri sila, mayak sila. But the story still held together in spite of my naivete as a filmmaker when I made that. And it would be a lesson both how to make a film and how not to make a film. So let me start with that. I know that anyway, 1521, I want to let the whole world know about Enrique de Malacca and how yung isang katutubong Pilipino. Well, hindi pa Pilipino kami tayo noon, di ba? Pero isang katutubo ay with the survival instincts and with knowledge of his forefathers could guide Magellan across to find his home again in Philippines. I know that this year, yun ang mission ko to at least let the world know about Enrique de Malacca. I'm not promoting my film, I'm just saying that through my film and maybe through this itong USB contest na I want to sponsor at the high school level, maybe lalawak ang kaalaman natin tungkol sa mga non-Marvel heroes natin. Na si Lapu-Lapu at si Enrique are going to be more in the consciousness of our young people. And that way, maybe new creators, mga bagong manililikha, makakagawa rin ng mga mas kaunay na mga kwento para sa sambayanan. I promise that to your. Let me start with De La Salle. Doy, give me a reminder, okay? Just so I can keep my promise. Sometimes at 78, I forget what I promised yesterday or 5 minutes ago. Pero send me an email and I will do it within this next month.
Maraming
don't forget.
salamat, Manong. That's very generous po of you.
Don't forget, March 16, that's in next week, is when they landed in Limasawa. And that, the quincentennial is celebrating the motto, yung slogan is humanity and victory. Kung ita-translate ko yan sa Tagalog, pagkakapwa at tagumpay. Kasi pagdating nila sa Limasawa, this tired, hungry crew from 99 days voyage on the Pacific Ocean, and they had a short visit sa Guam, where they had a clash kasi they called them the Isla de Ladrones, the Isle of Thieves. But when they came to the Limasawa, the people there, Humonhon's people, offered them fruits and pigs and gave them a warm kapwa feeling. I think that's what we should be celebrating, yung pakipagkapwa natin, which we displayed. And the other side was yung kadakilaan, yung Lapu-Lapu, yung tagumpay. Maybe Europeans look it as a tragedy na, wow, kawawa naman yung bida natin na pinaslang ni Lapu-Lapu, that savage. Pero when we look at it, hey, anybody who defends his culture deserves a superhero status, no? And one last little detail. I have, in my recent installation, which I'm also bringing to Spain, I showed the Battle of Mactan. And you have the final moments of Magellan. And there's Lapu-Lapu. May dalawang malaking waves, no? Parang kasi the Battle of Mactan was bought on the shore, no? On one wave is Lapu-Lapu with his shield and holding up his arnis stick. Don't forget, ang pinaka-martial arts ng Cebu was arnis. But of course, the historians haven't noted that. Now, I have added an extra feature. On the next wave, si Magellan's in between. On the other wave is the wife of Lapu-Lapu, si Princesa Bulacna. Bulacna. For the students, please take that into mind because she's hardly ever. But maybe dinagdagan ko ng kaunting gender equality na the final arnis blow comes from Princesa Bulacna. Nasa tabi lang si Magellan. O sige, kaya mo yan, kaya mo yan. Dito lang ako just in case. Pero ayun, Bulacna gives the final blow. A woman gets that final victory, kadaugan sa Mactan. And let's let that also add the women's role. Anyway, Women's Month ngayon.
Yes, actually,
To our
today po
historical
is
victory.
International Women's Day, March 8th. So that's very nice to hear from you.
Today.
Yes.
Oy, wow. Akala ko March 6 or, yeah. By the way, just one other last one. Alam mo, I don't celebrate February 14,
Balance.
the Day of Hearts. No?
Yeah.
Uh, let's just put it this way. Maybe for practical reasons. Well, Valentine's Day, okay, is also a colonial holiday for me. I don't know much about Valentine. Was he lalaki ba siya? Babae ba siya? Was he gay? I don't know much about him. But then I found my own uh, day, and I celebrated March 14 instead of February 14, and I call it Princess Bolakna Day. For the last 25 years, I'm the only one who goes and buys roses on March 14 and buy chocolates. Oh, mas mura pa ang chocolates at roses on March 14. You don't have to rush with everybody to make a reservation at a restaurant. You can
Yeah.
honor the day of your hearts without going with the echo chamber of Valentine's Day. I'm not trying to insult Valentine's Day. I'm just saying that as a way of coping with this colonial holiday, I have chosen March 14 as Princess Bolakna Day. So please join me March 14. Look for your loved one and show them ang kamahalan mo. And they will be surprised and it will have more meaning. And I think that's
Yeah.
all what our storytelling has to be. It's more meaningful kasi iba, kasi sariling atin. Mabuhay si Princess Bolakna. Today, Women's Day International.
So, March 14 po. To award our keynote speaker with the plaque of appreciation, I would like to call once again Dr. Dennis Trinidad.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeng. So let me just share the citation. I would like to request everyone to please join me in thanking Kidlat Tahimik by sending clap icons or heart or thumbs up sign icon. Okay, as a sign of our appreciation for inspiring the young generation of artists and filmmakers. So basically, we have a plaque of appreciation to be awarded to Manong Kidlat, but because of this setup, we are going to send the physical plaque to him by LBC, and for now, we are going to award this virtual plaque of appreciation. I would have called Dr. Tan to award in an in-person meeting to award this plaque of appreciation to our guest of honor, Manong Kidlat. So let me read the citation. De La Salle University,
And
Office of the
allow me to document your citation.
yeah, Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation hereby presents this plaque of appreciation to National Artist for Film, Manong Kidlat Tahimik, as a token of our sincere gratitude for gracing the 14th DLSU Arts Congress with his valuable presence as keynote speaker and guest of honor held on 8th of March in the year 2021. Signed yours truly, Chair of the 14th DLSU Arts Congress Committee and CLA Assistant Dean for Research and Advanced Studies, and Dr. Raymond Gerard Tan, Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation. Thank you very much, Manong Kidlat. Thank you very much for gracing the occasion.
Mabuhay ang genius ng Pilipino.
Mabuhay, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dennis, and thank you so much, Manong, not just for delivering a wonderful keynote presentation to all of us, but also by sharing with us the whole DLSU community your work soon. So we're looking forward to that. Join us on our next event, the virtual art exhibit with our featured artists that will start shortly after this event. Once again, thank you everyone for making time today, and we are looking forward to your participation in all of the events in this year's DLSU Arts Congress. Mabuhay ang sining, Animo Lasal.
Thank you.